grande senhor do teatro e do cinema, um dos grandes atores atuais, Willem Dafoe. A seguir a esta conversa, poderão ver um vídeo que é muito raro, segundo ele próprio diz, de uma peça em que ele, já há alguns anos, que ele atuou com o Gusta Group, e é uma peça que é Bird With You, que é uma adaptação da Festa do Racine, e portanto isso seguir-se-á a projeção logo a seguir a esta conversa. Portanto, é uma realidade e, portanto, gostaria de vos convidar para assistirem a essa peça. Comigo também está o Tiago Rodrigues, todos conhecem cá em Portugal, um grande encenador de teatro, e que eu penso que será mais adaptado que eu próprio a conduzir esta conversa. Eu intervirei também na parte mais cinema, se for necessário, mas e sobretudo depois para fazer a gestão das vossas perguntas. We'll do it in English. Thank you, Willem, to be with us all these days, to share with us your experience, your work. And I thought that we will show just after our conversation, one of your works in the theater. And as well, I would like to invite you to come tomorrow at 9:30 at the Nimas in Lisbon to see the work of Giada Colagrande, the Paul Wilson's life and death of Marina Abramovich. It's really a fantastic documentary about the work of Marina and Bob, and with Willem, that is a great part on it. I hope you can be there as well with us. Thank you, and I let you, maybe, or Tiago, to say some words and to start the conversation. Okay?
Obrigado, Paulo. Okay, so I'll jump right into it with, of course, the beginning, which is after a brief moment at Wisconsin University as a student of theater. You went to New York, you worked with Richard Schechner's the performance group, and then you start the Wooster group, and that's, I think, until the early 80s, your acting experience, it's about experimental theater in New York, mixing, of course, the tradition of actors and acting training, but with a lot of artists which were not from the theater but were performing on stage. How was that first event as an actor for you?
The Wooster Group was a company of really artists. It wasn't of theater people. And we had our own space. We were very poor theater. We were not a very popular theater for a long time. It was a company, and what kept us together is we had a place to work, which was very essential in those days. So you couldn't have a greedy landlord kick you out of your space. You always had a place to work. That was very important. And we worked every day. We made pieces, usually taking a text that existed already, particularly a text from the theater, and we would try to put it on its feet. Every day, I think we approached what we did as if we were doing a performance. One beautiful thing about it was there was no waiting, there was no tomorrow. Everything was like, let's do it now, see what it is. And that's what the impulse was very much behind theater. And then we started using a lot of home video equipment in very practical ways. Like if an actor wasn't there, we'd tape him. Do his part on a TV monitor. things like that. Started out very practically, and then we started playing around with a mixture of recorded and taped video, and started using very simple technology to help us put these plays on their feet.
And one thing about this work that strikes me as well, something that contributes to make you very unique as a film actor is that it's not necessarily this traditional psychology-based actor's work that's that also in a way New York was famous for. So in a way there's a big change in how an actor behaves towards a text, towards a director, towards acting. How did that shape you to the actor that you also later became as a film actor?
Okay. I think the big difference is, we approach things from physically, not psychologically. And I think we were much more interested in poetry than we were in narrative. As an actor, it was all very practical. It was about doing. I approached what I did, and I still sort of approach what I do, all based on the actions and all based on, I think of myself sometimes as a dancer more than an actor or an interpreter. That is something that really shaped me. The kind of work I'm interested in has always been shaped by this early experiences of not being so interested in psychology or being trained in psychology, but more interested in doing things in front of people.
Is it that you feel that on stage the performance as a language is stronger or more important, this global speech of the performance, than the actor and its identity or a character?
Well, I think it had something to do with, it's hard to speak in a general way, but I think, we were always kind of anti-illusion. There was none of that typical theater, what you're seeing on is, what you're seeing is going on for real. There were certain distancing devices and certain things built in to always remind you what you were seeing is what you were seeing. And at the same time, we would play with, hopefully an elevated artificial language, which was a way that we could get closer to what we were talking about. It was a language that didn't get lost on personality and manner and the naturalism that, I think can limit actors.
Well, we'll get back to the theater experience, which I think is extremely rich to go back to throughout the conversation. But I think one thing that for sure interests most of the people here, or everyone, is how do you deal having this background and having this, these sort of strong aesthetics towards the creation of theater. Then when you go and do film, early 80s, American film.
I'm not thinking about that. I'm just a kid, from the Midwest in Wisconsin that never was really trained and was very unsophisticated about, and had no cultural tradition, except for football and drinking beer and a few other things. And I just was attracted to being in the room with these people, and we were making things. And then someone saw me. My identity was totally to that place. I never thought of a career as an actor. I didn't even necessarily think of myself as an actor. And then someone saw me at this theater and said, would you like to do movies? In fact, just for curiosity, it may be interesting that that person was Catherine Bigelow, who is a director that, has gone on to a great recognition. She asked me whether I wanted to be in a movie. And of course I had made little experimental films with friends, because that was a time in New York where everybody was making experimental films. And I said, yes, I read the script. And I remember one of the funniest things is I didn't have an agent or anything like that. And when it was time to ask me what I needed, you know, like as a contract, I didn't know. And I was calling up friends saying, what do I ask for? What do I ask for? What's the right amount of money? What can I get away with, you know? And it really showed me I didn't have any friends who were in the movies. So I just made up a number, and it seemed like a fortune to me at the time.
Did they accept the number? Did they accept it?
Absolutely. I should have asked them for more. But just that, I mean, I don't want to be too silly or too coy about it. Of course, I had my ambitions, and of course, but I'm telling you, when I'm a 22-year-old kid in New York City, I'm not thinking about tomorrow. And that was really the world that I started working from. And also, just quickly, this company that I started working with in New York, I ended up, that was my company for like 26 years. And I think it not only kept me, gave me a family, gave me a place to work, gave me a base, but also it kept me honest, because every time that I had to go away from that work to do a movie, I had to be really sure that it was worth it. And I'm not talking about economically, I mean artistically. So that was a great discipline for many years.
Eu só peço para não utilizarem os flashes, está bem? Agora.
Did you have problems with dealing with preparation for film? I mean, there's, for instance, I think in Platoon, it's your first Oscar nomination. It's still, we can call it an early film in your career. It's '86, Oliver Stone's Platoon, and you did this sort of preparing in the jungle and training. What we might say, you know, this traditional research for a role? No?
Not really. First of all, you know, I really think that it's true that you know, acting is not one thing, performing is not one thing. You gotta find what your end of the deal is. Because with every project, your responsibilities are different, the kind of performing is different, your job in the context of the whole group making a thing is different. And you always have to figure that out. You always have to kind of intuit where to go. So the preparation, there's no way to have a standard preparation. And if you do, I think you're an idiot, because you're missing, you know, huge opportunities to work different ways. I think that's important to keep you from being routinized in a certain kind of corruption. But the only reason why I said, oh no, that's not traditional. What we did in Platoon was very radical, because they took all these young actors and just dropped them off in the jungle one day. And you could never do that now. It was an independent movie. Oliver Stone was healthily crazy at that time. And they dropped us out there, and the first couple of hours, people said, I'm going to call my agent, this is an outrage, I'm going to call a lawyer, you know. Some of the guys, because it wasn't clear that we were going to go through this training like this. And the guys training us said, well, we were shooting in the Philippines. They said, well, Manila's about 100 kilometers out. Start walking. And we trained. Listen, I'm kind of telling a silly story, but the important thing is that wasn't traditional in the respect of it was kind of practical training. We were learning how to do these things because in the movie we had to do soldier things, so we learned how to do soldier things. There wasn't any psychology about that. There was learning how to deal with these weapons, learning how to deal with the business of being a soldier. We didn't talk about anything beyond that, and we were living in holes that we made. We were playing, war games. Sounds all a little silly, but it ran really deep. And by the time it came to shoot that movie, we had a relationship and a history with our weapons, with the way of being, with our clothes, with the land, and that was the start of the pretending. You know, that was the preparation, and it was such practical preparation. It saved us because then when we went to shoot, it became like totally objective driven, practical.
Again, it's about doing.
Doing, when you do things, stuff happens. Once you get movement, stuff happens. And as long as you have someone that is framing you right and is setting up the circumstances for the doing, then usually something interesting happens. And I think that's why I'm so dependent and I love so much a director-driven cinema, because the best things happen when you can do things without, with a certain amount of abandon and a certain amount of not knowing. And that's easier to do when you have someone that you can really give yourself to.
You said earlier something that we might say, I would translate as, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, as if you think you have a method that works, then you're wrong. Something like that.
Some people, everybody's different. And some people want to do a particular thing and refine it. And sometimes that's interesting. But for me, for whatever reason, sometimes I say, is this irresponsible? Is this a lack of a certain kind of rigor? But I don't think so. I just need to mix it up. I need to always, I always feel best when, this is a little bit of a cliche, but I feel best when I'm a little scared and I don't know where I'm going. And if you do that enough times, it doesn't run that deep, but you have the experience of an adventure, of something, you can invite a transformation in a way that's reckless and interesting things happen. So, I say I don't have a method, but I do notice certain kind of tendencies. So you go toward those tendencies to try to find the triggers that help you with the pretending. Sometimes you can do a movie and it's a costume. Sometimes you can do a movie, it's an accent. You're always looking for the mask, and I am, to take you away from yourself so you can go deeper, so you aren't limited by your impulse and you're taking on in your imagination and even in your body sometimes the impulses of something else, someone, something else, using yourself as a thing.
Well, this adventurous, slightly scared, sort of first impulse in cinema, of course, it's almost guaranteed. How do you deal with that surge in theater, where you have a score, where you train a lot, where you repeat?
Yeah, that's there are plenty of differences between the two, but I think the most, clearly the most striking difference is your job is different. In film, there's all kinds of films. In most films, you're dealing with first impulses. You go to a place, you're there for half a day, you shoot there, you move on, you go to another place. You're not going to come back there. You're not going to do the same score. You're not going to deal with the same scene again. So you're dealing with kind of the newness of things, and in theater, in most theater, you know the score, and your job is mostly about reanimating. I think one is a good practice for the other, because you can mix the two.
And do you think that this idea of transformation of yourself, the triggers that allow you to go deeper in this transforming, do you think that there's one of the languages where you can go deeper, theater or film?
I don't know. I do think, I don't know. I think you can consider more when you return to something. Because with your life, if you're doing a show and in the period of that show, someone close to you dies, you go through a whole grieving process. You're not necessarily trying to put that on the performance, because that's your life. It's going to filter into the performance. So you're going to be always, your life is always going to be coloring it and changing it. So it's more dynamic, and I think you can, approach a situation from more angles. In film, you really can't do that. And I'm not sure you need to, because that's not what the name of the game is. And also, film, I mean, let's face it, I think it's, it's clearly, the filmmaker is the important part. They need actors. Or do they need actors? But, in theater, the actors are really what keep it driving, keep it moving.
You have this sense of control with theater that, of course, with cinema you don't have.
Yeah, you control your rhythms. You also get the satisfaction of starting something and finishing it. You never have that in cinema. You make some stuff, you collect some experiences, some stuff happens to you. You sometimes have an intention to try to accomplish something, but you bring this pile of stuff and then you dump it on someone and they do something else with it, generally speaking. Right? And believe me, I'm not a snob. I don't think one is better than the other, or they're just different. And some actors can do both. I've got friends that say, what, you're a much better theater actor than a film actor. Then there's other people that say just the opposite.
Do you think that you're a particular film actor because of the theater actor you are, or you don't feel?
I think I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because I approach things differently, and I'm interested in different things. When I talk to my friend, people that work in movies, I don't feel like them at all. I mean, when I hear them talk about why they select projects and what they're interested in, I like keep my mouth shut. I just listen because I have a different experience. And everybody always talks about actors, selecting characters and scripts. I look at the whole experience. I look at the director. I look at, it's very intuitive for me. I think it's because that experience of working in the Wooster Group, even though I was primarily the Wooster Group, even though, well, I feel like I just identified with being a maker or helping a maker do something rather than being an actor in traditional terms.
And when you choose something, because of course, as a film actor, for sure, there's no way to tell your story without, talking about characters.
There isn't.
Is there?
I don't know.
In a way, the guy who did Christ and the Antichrist in the same life. The guy.
Oh, my story.
Yeah, well, yeah, your Wikipedia sort of list.
No, I think the best way to tell your story is to not have to tell your story. It's to. I mean, in theory, the thing that I like to try to do. This is one thing that's a pattern for me. And I'm starting to see it, and I'm starting to embrace it. Maybe it's time I should stop. Maybe it's becoming a bad habit. I don't know. But I really like, taking someone. I feel best when I'm taking someone else's story and going towards it. It's not my story. I have some feel for it, but I don't need to interpret it. I guess that's the thing that I want to talk about. I don't think of myself as an interpretive person. I don't want to show you anything. I don't want to tell you anything about the nature of people. I want to try to go directly as possible to be that thing and have you watch something and have you think whatever you think. I don't think it's good to try to, it's not my job to manipulate an effect. You have to start out with some intention, otherwise you're just sitting there passively. You've got to have some kind of plan. But you really, once you get in movement, you kind of abandon that. And I think, once again, that's why I like that idea of a director-driven cinema, because someone's got to watch, someone's got to frame, and the other person's got to do, generally speaking. Every time I say something, I can think of exceptions.
Well, but generalizing, which is always dangerous, but generalizing.
Are you in the world?
Yeah, well, yeah. That's us, eh? We're general. But generalizing, you mostly go towards something that a director, for instance, proposes to you or asks of you.
Yes, and sometimes it changes, as you do.
And how is it, this dialogue, in the meanwhile, that sometimes it changes?
Are we talking too abstractly?
Well, no, we can go into a specific
I don't want to get too soft on the theory. I feel more comfortable if I can tell a few stories and things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'm kind of.
you work with such different film directors, it's sure you have a kind of different experience with them completely, because you work with Oliver Stone or Ferrara or the big vendors are completely different one from the other ones. And you feel more comfortable with one with the other one, or you just, because some of them, I think they will direct you even every step you do, other ones let you completely free, everything, and it's incredible your career because there are such different kind of productions, kind of, from Hollywood to independent movies and everything, and it's incredible where you feel more. I think if you accept it because you feel comfortable with all of them, but it's more with some of them and more with the other ones.
I definitely feel comfortable with some more than others. I think I feel mostly comfortable with the ones that. No, that's not true. I was going to say I feel most comfortable with the people that don't want me to be an actor. But that's not true because sometimes they really want me to be an actor. But I guess I feel most comfortable with the ones that take me on as a collaborator, and I feel like I'm their not alter ego, but I'm I'm just the person that does what they want to do. That's where it starts. I like working very much from mimicry and from imitation as a starting place. That's really a great way for me to work. Or finding a good mask, example of something, and just copying it for a long time. I like that. People that understand. Yeah, I think I feel most comfortable when people want to work with me. They put demands on me. That's the truth. I just remembered something. I don't like it when guys goes, generally speaking. No, that's good. That's good. Cool. I guess that's the only truth. I also, sometimes people say, oh, I say director-driven cinema. The truth is, you see a good movie, and I get immediately seduced. And if I see enough good movies from a director, I think, I want to be there. I want to be with them. It's about the company you keep. The stimulation, the inspiration. That's what I like. And the truth is, sometimes I get in trouble because some movies don't need actors. And then I think, well, I don't want to be an actor. I want to be a thing. And then other movies really need actors. So it's interesting. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I think the fun thing to do is not have a way of doing things hard and keep it always changing.
Before opening it to questions from the audience, I'm sure there will be a lot. Still, when you say you repeat it a lot of times, I'll try not to be general and give examples this time. But when you say not to be an actor,
that was for me.
Yeah, no, I was asking general questions. Mea culpa, it's my fault. No, totally my fault. When you do works such as Shadow of the Vampire, Bobby Peru in this amazing scene with Laura Dern, this sort of adventurous, you don't know what's going to happen, but you know, Lost Temptation of Christ. You have these really far from you characters, these sort of really very composed, iconic, sometimes historical or mythical characters. Are these examples of characters that, or works or demands where you're more comfortable with, or the gray zone of this is in a way Willem Dafoe, but also a character? It's more problematic for you.
I like both, but I think generally I'm more, I don't want to use the word successful, but we know what I'm talking about. I think the results are usually better when I have a mask, when I have something that's far away from me. You mentioned Shadow of the Vampire, a huge mask. I talked about working from imitation. I was set free by that. Willem was not there. You know, only, you know, I put that stuff on. I had very heavy makeup in that, and a corset. I didn't feel like myself. I didn't look like myself. I wasn't myself. Someone else did that performance. And when you get in that place where it kind of does itself, it's a very beautiful thing. Bobby Peru, I had fake teeth and a really good look. I didn't say to myself, the costume's going to do this one. I don't have to do anything. But the truth is, the setup was so perfect, I didn't think. If the world's set, you just go in there, it does itself. With Last Temptation, that was an interesting role because it was such a passive role. The whole thing was, a guy kept on saying, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, you know. Voices would say, do this now. This is your job, or you're going to have to do this. And he's saying, hey man, I'm not into it. You know, so it was a reactive role. And I just had to put myself in a place of not, you know, to really be open to, I didn't have to put anything out there. That was a case where I didn't need to get anything started. I just had to be sort of present and have stuff happen to me. And that's really fun. Just, you know, it loved to happen. I love that expression. I don't know where it comes from, but it loved to happen. And so much of the best performing experiences for me are where you get to that point where you get out of the way of it. And it does happen, but you're there ready to receive it and send it on its way with craft and things and consideration, but really where the impulse comes from. It's not from you, it's from something that's already there.
Just one last question, and we open it. You worked and were parts, and it's a big, essential part of the identity of the Wooster Group during 25 maybe years, you know, 76 to 2001, something like that. Three. We only had the opportunity, I think, to see the Wooster Group once in Portugal, with the Harry Ape in '98. But after the Wooster Group, you've been working in theater with Richard Foreman, with Bob Wilson. Why these choices? What's driven you? Of course, with the Wooster Group, it's your history, but now you come back to theater, you keep on working with theater.
Richard Foreman and Bob Wilson, they're very different, but they both were huge influences on us when we were working downtown at the very beginning. There was not a full generation ahead of us, but they're, you know, they were sort of the people that we were watching when we were making our pieces. So there were people that I always followed and I always admired. Both of them, through the years, working for, 40, 50 years, they both have refined a language, an aesthetic that's very specific. And when I get in a Richard Foreman show, I'm the best audience in the world. I think things I've never thought of. I feel smart. I feel pleasure. I'm so happy to be there. So I love his theater. So when he asks me to do a show, I'm there. Bob Wilson, different, but he believes in artificiality. He believes in tension. He believes in some kind of performing that I think is very interesting, and I wanted to see what that was about.
You mentioned several differences about working or acting in the cinema, in the movies, or acting in a theater. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how do you feel as an actor performing on stage in front of a live audience, such as this one, or acting from the camera. What does the audience do to you?
Probably what you already know. It gives you energy, but I do feel like I don't like to think about the audience so much. They're an abstraction. It's like some people really like to contact people. I don't want to get sucked into that game of seducing them or trying to get love from them or get anything from them. I like them to be there and to be with them, but not ever get too personal. What's personal is happening here, and you're going to watch. No, I'm joking, but the audience isn't, you know, the thing about theater that I love is that your day is a preparation for that performance, and then you do that performance, and you do it from beginning to end, and if it's a demanding performance, you've done something. You feel, it feels like a, you know, it feels like an honest way to make a living, and it feels like you know, given something, or at least you've tried. With films, it's slightly different. There is an audience there. It's the crew. It's the camera, too. And as I get older, and I think this is a good thing, I don't forget about them, but they're friends of mine. I you know, get very comfortable with them very early. So it's a different kind of relationship, but there's always an audience there. How'd I do?
What about other actors? There are some actors that you like particularly working with, or some experiences that you had that you may want to share with us?
Oh God. Of other actors?
Whom you have worked with, and you like to work, or that you had some experiences that was important that you would cherish most?
Oh God, that's a, boy, I don't have that kind of memory. You know, as far as actors, I always get self-conscious talking about other actors because, you know, when you work with people, it's an intimate thing, and I don't know, somehow when you try to account for what goes between you, it's never satisfying. Sometimes you have to do it for publicity. And I always feel not very generous because even if I liked someone a lot, I can't quite bring myself to say, oh, they're a fantastic actor, and go on and really describe what's great about them. I don't have the imagination for it. No, I don't. Maybe I am selfish. I don't think I am. I love working. No, I don't know what to say. Yes.
Willem, you talked about planning your mask a lot just now. What's it like when you actually have to wear a real mask? Like in Spider-Man, for me, it was very frustrating watching you wear a mask because you have such a great expressive face. But did you enjoy that, or did you find that frustrating?
In that case, I think that that costume had its limitations. I think the most interesting things in that movie for me were the other character, really, the father, because it slid outside in and out of comedy and drama. The Green Goblin part, are people with me? Have they seen this movie? You know, the Green Goblin part, it's fun to do physical things. I always like to do physical things. I mean, choreograph fights and zip around on these machines and on wires. I like all that stuff. But you're right. I'm not thinking about my face, but I think the voice is so disembodied, you didn't get the sense of me being there enough. So I think that wasn't a great idea. I didn't give in to the frustration. I just sort of accepted it and tried to concentrate on other things. And it was only it's only now, tonight, that I confess that it probably wasn't the greatest thing to work with. But I think it functions fine. It's kind of academic to complain about.
Yes, you mentioned back in your early 20s when you went to New York and feeling closer to poetry than to narrative. Who were those poets or that poet? And if no name or many names come in, maybe a line of poetry would do.
I'm afraid I meant poetry in a very broad sense. I meant poetry like, I don't know what I meant, but you know what I meant. Poetry in the sense of all those intangible things that are beautiful and inspire you and touch you, but they don't really need to be, you know, you don't have to bring your conceptual mind and say, this means this. You can let it flow. You can let it, you know, be a taste and a smell, a sound. That thing that theater has so strongly is what attracted me. You can bend time, you can bend perception. You can do it in movies too, of course. But I guess that's what I was talking about. I mean, what is poetry, folks?
Hi, my name is Sergio. You said something that's quite interesting just now. You said sometimes you do roles where you're an actor, sometimes you do roles where you don't need an actor. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, I guess I meant, I guess when I say when you need an actor, you need to use a certain kind of language, or sometimes a certain kind of awkwardness, or you know, sometimes you see performances and they're clearly non-actors, so you watch them in a different way and they can give themselves to what they're doing in a different way. They may be awkward, but they can't articulate certain things, but there's a presence there because they don't need anything from the experience. And sometimes I have the fantasy that I can work in that mode. But other times, you know that you have certain objectives to accomplish in a scene, and the director says, well, this is what has to happen, or this is where we want to go, or we need to go. And the actor part is the person, when I say actor, I mean the person that has the language to try to make that effect, knows how to orchestrate that, where other times, when I say non-actor, I guess they don't have those same kind of tools. So their force and how they approach things is different. It's an interesting thing to me, and I'm just starting to think about it. I remember I saw, just real quick, I met Carlos Regadas, right? And I like his films. And, you know, I liked him very much personally when I met him. And I more or less said, Carlos, you know, let's work together, you know? And he was like, yes, I like you very much, you know, but I don't really use actors. And I know what he's talking about. And I was like, no, but Carlos, I won't be an actor for you. This is kind of what I'm talking about. If you know his films, you know what I'm talking about?
Carlos Regadas made Dafoe, and he made a film that is going to open very now in Portugal. It's Mexican director.
Sorry if I didn't make that totally clear. I'm trying to figure it out right now myself. I'm serious.
Hello. Coming from such a physical actor like you, I would like you to share with us the experience of being it's called a radiophonic actor, like the thing you've done with Lou Reed, The Raven.
The Raven, yeah.
How was it to play with only your voice?
You know, I've done that in some films. Hell, I've even done that in a couple of commercials. Just used my voice. I like it. I like it because it's one thing, and then it's like you hear those stories about people that lose an arm, they get more strength in this arm, you know? It's like that. You take everything away. You have one way to express everything, and the focus and you learning how to use your voice is really great when you do strictly voice stuff. In the case of Lou Reed, I've always liked that. I've liked the Raven ever since I was a little kid. And I remember he asked me, we did it in one take, without a break, and it's quite long. And I just zipped it one through, and that was it. He said, ciao. But I do like doing voice stuff.
Hi. I always remember you as a great villain. You have your share of villains, and since you're such a nice guy, I was wondering, do you choose to be the villain, or the director approaches you to be the villain? Or are you just menacing? Because you seem such a nice guy, but on camera, on film, you're such a villain. I remember the first time that I saw you was in Streets of Fire, and you were very menacing in that,
Okay.
but you're a very nice guy. So, do you choose to be a villain or a director?
Got it. I don't see it that way. I play all kinds of things in my own mind, and that's okay. I think villains are fun to play. I think, yeah, that people have asked me to do that, because I'm not, you know, in Hollywood terms particularly, I'm not talking about the other part of my filmography, but in Hollywood terms, you know, if you have a success with something, they want you to repeat it. That's generally true. And when I started out, I was a character. You know, they saw me, you know, I'm not a normal looking guy. I'm not, and the way I move and the way I approach things, all that. I couldn't play the boy next door, so I kind of become a character actor when I'm very young. And the best characters, when you're young, are villains. So I think I started out, at least in studio films, doing that way, and doing a lot of villains. And I enjoyed it because it's much more fun than playing a sanctimonious, holy person. Whoa, got to that later. I tried to mix it up because I was worried about getting typecast, and I think I have. And as I get older, it's nice because people want me to do different kinds of things.
Hi. You said earlier that life sometimes filters into your performance. Do your characters ever, affect your life once you're done, once you take off the mask?
You know, I used to say no because it's embarrassing for an actor to say, oh, I can't shake a character. But the truth is, no, they stay with you, and as you're working on something, even though I'm not a person that stays in character, I don't know what that is. If you're doing something, if you're considering a way of being, or are willing to be a certain kind of person, or willing to be in a certain kind of world for 12 hours of the day, it's going to leak into your dreams, it's going to take over. So just because the film finishes doesn't mean that immediately goes away. But on the other hand, that character comes forward because of the situation and the camera's rolling, so yes and no. But I do find, as I get older, I get more sensitive. You'd think it would be the other way around, because you'd think I would get used to it and say, it's just performing. But stuff has its hold on me much longer. Now, I'm more emotional.
Just one last question.
You mentioned earlier that you prefer to work in director-driven pictures, and I was wondering, as you get older, do you have aspirations actually to work more behind the camera, so you're actually driving direction yourself?
Not really. I like to feel like a collaborator. I don't think of myself simply as an actor. I think of myself on a guy on a set trying to make this thing. But, there's the doer and the watcher, and I feel more comfortable in the doing, and also I feel more comfortable in the irresponsibility of being an actor. Because on some level, you're dealing with stuff, but in the end, you're not kind of responsible for where it's all leading or what you're presenting to the audience. That I'm not so interested in. I'm a little bit, somewhere guiltily, sensation junkie, you know? So that'll keep me on the other side of the camera.
Just a second question on that.
I don't want to tell people what to do either.
But have you ever been disappointed with one of your roles in
Often. Because sometimes you'll be doing things and it feels so good. and you're in the groove and you think, wow, this is just fantastic, what we have going on here. And then it just doesn't, then you see the movie and you say, boo. You know? But it can work the other way around too. You can be pleasantly surprised.
Okay, we're almost closing. Just one last question. When you're disappointed, is it still worth it?
Easy answer, yes.